We're live. Okay, so we've concluded here a very important and awesome fact. We're getting ready for Yutes Kislev tomorrow night, so we should really know what we're celebrating. And in conclusion, we said there are two different heterim for learning Kabbalah before Mashiach comes. One is Pikuach Nefesh, one is because you're preparing yourself for the great and awesome days of Mashiach, where we're going to need to prepare our hearts to be ready for all that knowledge. We said that the two different stories, the Hasidic stories, one was that the Alter Rebbe came with the famous mashal about the crushing the stone in the king's crown. This was a heter for Pikuach Nefesh. If you'll get a drop of water to go into the prince's mouth, you'll save his life. And therefore, he was essentially exactly describing the halachic conditions of why you're allowed to learn Kabbalah to save a life, right? But he also indicated there that how much are you allowed to learn? A drop. Because if your reason for learning it is to save a life, you're only allowed to have a drop, because remember, this is essentially prohibited stuff. Should you come into a situation where you're now going to take a heter for learning in order to prepare for Mashiach, you're allowed to learn a lot more. You're allowed to learn as much as you possibly can. Like we say, Kefi Koach Adam, like the Rambam says. However, there was no such heter for that in the days of the Alter Rebbe, because they weren't yet in those days where they had to prepare their hearts for Mashiach's coming. He was still seemingly far off. Comes the Alter Rebbe, gets thrown in prison because he anyway started to initiate that process, and it was too soon. So he was thrown in prison, and he was arrested because he was breaking Jewish law, not laws of man alone. And therefore, the whole idea is that through his Mesiras Nefesh, he was granted permission from above, and therefore granted all of us permission from above to suddenly be able to learn Chassidus at the level of Chabad, which means at an expanded capacity, similar to the level of Gemara over Mishnah, not just drops, but the full-blown capacity. And therefore, what he ultimately did was he arranged a heter for us to learn because we're in the times preparing for Mashiach, which means he ushered in those days. And that is really the celebration of Yutes Kislev. He ushered in a new era of human history, which was we are now no longer in Galus, right? He ended essentially the Galus. He didn't necessarily bring Mashiach yet, but he put us into this little way area where we're now no longer in Galus, no longer Mashiach, but we're in preparing for Mashiach times, which comes, Baruch Hashem, with some good frills, right? You can all of a sudden learn Kabbalah until the cows come home. And this is what we said in other places. It's like the idea of tasting the Shabbos meal, right? There's no shaykhs to tasting the Shabbos meal in a Wednesday, right? You have a mitzvah to taste the Shabbos meal Erev Shabbos after Chatzos, so all of a sudden you have tastes of Shabbos. You didn't have that before. So he gave us a taste of Shabbos. And that's the story. So now let's conclude the whole Sicha. And it actually kind of comes with a poignant, punchy ending here. He says, Amaisa hua ikra. Everyone has it? Os hey. Once the two Rebbes, the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid, gave this instruction to the Alter Rebbe, that not only should he not stop from saying Chassidus in this new Chabad way, but what did they tell him? When you get out, you should do even more. This now becomes an instruction for every single one of us. We now suddenly come into a situation where we have to prepare ourselves for that time when Mashiach is going to come. Where those days when the whole world will be occupied only with the knowledge of God alone. How? Which means from that point on, it's not just the Alter Rebbe was given this heter. All of Am Yisrael was given this heter. And therefore we all have the permission, and what he's going to say in a second, which is pretty much an intense statement, we also have the obligation to learn Chassidus at that level of understanding. In other words, it is no longer sufficient to learn Chassidus and Kabbalah at the level of small nakudas, right? Because since we're now allowed to learn it, because we've come into this new era, we now have a responsibility to do the proper avoda in this new era, which will bring us to the true era, which is the actual coming of Mashiach, not just the preparation for Mashiach. So it's really a hurrah for each and every one of us. And he says it clearly in the next line, in the next paragraph. Mizem muvan. According to this, it's understood. Shagam mi. Rabbi's gonna pull out his, every once in a while in Fabrengens, he has this like theoretical person. This guy thinks that he could get away with this, and this guy thinks he can get away with this. It's like you just don't want to be that guy. But he starts pointing his fingers at you might think, right? The feed daito, that some guy in his mind, he might say that limud pnimius Torah, that learning Kabbalah, learning Chassidus, ubefrat ba'ofen shel Chabad, let alone Chabad Chassidus, who needs all that? In other words, learning b'harchava, bin Havana, and Asaga in a way of Yisparnasum, eino muchrach lachayos nafsho. He might say, I am already a healthy Litvish Yid that has parents that were religious and grandparents, and my Zede was a big Rav and who knows where. I don't need you and I don't need your Chassidus, he might say, right? He doesn't need it in order to save his spiritual life. And he certainly doesn't need it, to go even deeper than saving his life. His life is not in jeopardy. Ki ladato, because according to his opinion, his spiritual life is not in any danger. And he might say, I'm good with nigla. I'm good. You want to sprinkle a little musar in there? Okay, I'll take like a, give me a little Barditchever on the side, throw a little Rabbi Nachman in. If you want to spice up my nigla with a little bit of musar and Chassidus, fine. In other words, what do we say a person needs this Chassidus for? To save your life because of this intense, dark, dark moments of the end of Galus. Our spiritual lives are in danger. He might say his spiritual life is not in danger. He doesn't really need it. Right? The Rebbe says, he points to him a question. How can you justify exempting yourself from this learning? You have a claim, you don't need it, right? But how can you exempt yourself from learning it? Guess what? There is a Torah. You have to follow it, right? You follow the Torah. There's a clear psak din in the Torah, in the Hilchos Talmud Torah of the Alter Rebbe, which, by the way, is not controversial in the way that maybe his Chassidus is. Everybody holds by the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch. Maybe they don't paskin according to every single detail, but you have to take him into account, no matter what sug of Yid you come from. And he paskins openly over there. Shekol nefesh misrael chayev lilmod kol haTorah kula. Every Jew has to learn the whole Torah. A person can't come along and say, I'm not going to learn remez. Not interested, right? Or I'm going to learn all the laws of Torah, but not the Hilchos Tefillin. You're not allowed to do that, right? You're like a kofar. You can't say there's a part of Torah that you don't learn. And he says, hen in the Pishtei halachas, hen beramazim, hen bedrashos, and sodos. The Alter Rebbe says very clearly that you have to learn all levels. In other words, obviously you're not going to get to everything, but you can't say that you're going to exclude yourself from a certain aspect of Torah, like Beshita, right? Okay, I didn't have time for it today. I'll have time for it tomorrow. But you can't just say, I don't need sodos. I don't need ramazim, because a person has a chiyuv to learn kol Torah kula. And not only do you have to learn the Torah, but according to the Alter Rebbe, you're not even yotzi your obligation unless you're being machadesh new ideas in halacha and in agada and in nigla and also in nister, right? There's basically this idea that to properly learn, you have to learn to the point where you're coming up with your own ideas. This is a chiyuv. So the point, one of the ways that the Rebbe brings this out in other places is this heter that the Arizal originally took for himself, where the Arizal said these famous words that are quoted in the Tanya, mutter u'mitzvah legalo zos hachachma. Right? Let's revisit this for a second. It's mutter and it's commandment to reveal this wisdom. What is the meaning of mutter u'mitzvah? It's asur and now it's mutter. Why are you going to say mutter u'mitzvah? What does mutter u'mitzvah add? The Arizal came along with this pikuach nefesh reality of allowing the Torah to be learned, because already in his time. He felt like it was so dark, he had to reveal it, and he made it mutter. And the Chaim Vital quotes in the introduction, the Sharak Damos, it's now mutter or mitzvah. Why does he have to add mitzvah? Why is it suddenly mitzvah? Yeah?
Mutter means you're allowed, but you don't have to do it.
So why suddenly, because it's mutter, is it mitzvah?
Well, the whole reason why it's mutter is because it's needed. It's needed. It's a mitzvah.
But what if a guy says, my life's not in jeopardy, I don't need your heter? Right? Here's the difference, right? There could be such a thing that something could be mutter and not mitzvah. A person say, yeah, there's a heter to do what and such, but no, I don't need it. I'm good. Thanks. You take the heter, Like it says, Esav was the one who said, Yesh li Rav. The joke. Yaakov said, Yesh li Kol. I said, Yesh li Rav. It's like to say, I have a Rav.com. You can find a heter for anything. A guy might say, good, there's a heter. I don't want your heter. Why suddenly come along and say that he says mutter u mitzvah? Once there's a heter, you have an absolute obligation. You can't get out of it now. Why? You have an answer to this question? Yeah.
Since before whatever it wasn't mutter, so then you can learn it.
Right.
Now that's mutter, you might think that maybe I can learn it, but once you say mitzvah, then you have to.
Yeah, but why is he saying mitzvah?
Because now it's a
mitzvah.
Yes, because the etzem, it's called Torah. And who says you're patur from learning Torah? The only reason you're patur from learning Torah to begin with is because there was a chesron in the Gavra that you were not allowed to touch this Torah. Once that prohibition goes away, that you have a heter, you automatically have a mitzvah. The mitzvah was there already. There's no permissibility for a person to say, I'm not going to learn Torah. I'm not going to learn a part of Torah. Who do you think you are? You're not going to learn Mishnah, you're going to learn Gemara. You're not going to learn Gemara, you're going to learn Halacha. You're like a kofir. You're not allowed to say that. You have a mitzvah to learn Kol HaTorah Kula. Remez, Drush, Pshat, so the whole 9 yards. The only thing is what? When it comes to this Chassidus business, there was chains around me. I wasn't allowed to learn it because it was usher. Now there's a heter. Guess what? There's also a mitzvah. So a person not allowed to say, I'm going to patur myself from Chassidic Torah. You're not allowed to do that. You have to learn Chassidus, what the Rabbi is saying here. And then the Rabbi goes further. And he says, not only do you have to learn Chassidus in the way of the Magid, that was good before the Alter Rebbe came out of prison. Once the Alter Rebbe came out of prison and opened up the vaults of Chabad Chassidus, which is, again, you can call it like a name of an organization, but that's not what it is. It's a way of learning Chassidus in the fullest measure. Once that became permissible, who said you're allowed to be a Jew without it? It is a part of Kol HaTorah Kula, which you are obligated in. Only what? Until before Yutes Kislev, you weren't allowed to touch it. Now you're mutter, you're mitzvah. So basically what this is saying, in very simple words, is that everybody has to become a Chabadnik. Period. You're not allowed to patur yourself, according to the Rebbe's understanding, from the learning of Chabad Chassidus. That makes you a Chabadnik. What is a Chabadnik? Chabadnik is someone who learns Chabad Chassidus. If, because you learn Chabad Chassidus, you see the world in a new way and you want to act differently, which will probably happen to you, kol hakavod. But a Chabadnik is someone who learns the Penimius Torah in a way of Havana and Asaga. You are now permitted to do that. Guess what? You have to do it. That's what the Rebbe is saying here. Where do you get off? This guy saying, I'm good. I'm good. I don't need your heter. Thank you very much. You need my heter. It's mutter and mitzvah. So it's a very strong statement here. Not only did the Alter Rebbe usher in a new era of history, he ushered in a new way to be Jewish. Because now that we're preparing our hearts for Mashiach's times, it comes with new responsibilities, new obligations. How do you prepare your heart for Mashiach's time? What do I do, Rabbi, to be in this new era of history where I'm gaining ground on having Mashiach come? You have to expand your mind, the Penimius Torah, to the fullest extent. Where do I find that? Good enough for you. They brought it and put it in books, and it's all available for you, right? You can come to YTD. Yeah.
Could one argue that, let's say he's not up to their entire life, he's dealing with Mikra and nothing.
So it says a person is mishalish his limud b'chol yom. No, you can't. In other words, you have to learn a third in Mikra, third in Mishnah, third in Talmud. That's nigla. But then you have to. There's a nister involved. So there's a nister of Mikra, there's a nister of Mishnah, there's a nister of Talmud, right? In other words, you can say I didn't get up to that. Just like you could say, I'm working my way through Shas, and I didn't get to the end, right? So fine, you're going to start. You have to put it in a little bit. But not only the question really has to be begged. If what he's saying is true, why in the world of all the Torah that I'm going to putter myself and put on hold would it be the Torah that is now like being given by God for the first time access to because it prepares the world for Mashiach? What kind of a chacham is that? What kind of a Torah are you learning that gets you to those conclusions that the best thing I can do right now for myself and the world is to ignore the unique materials that were given specifically to usher in Mashiach's times? That's a chacham, right? It's not. It's not a chacham. It's a foolish decision. And the person, only reason why a person holds by these types of decisions is what we call minhag avoseinu biyodenu. There's a bad version of this concept of having a minhag of your forefathers, right? There was an old debate back in the times of the Gra, back in the times even before that, and certainly a couple generations afterwards, where there was a real concern that Chassidus was dangerous and was coming from the other side. Right, because there were certain people that got their hands on the works of the Arizal, right, Shabtai Tzvi, and the like, and they went running off with campaigning on this Kabbalah mission, and they really drew the Jewish people into a bad place. They pretended that they were messiahs, and they were using the Kabbalah to basically weaken the Torah. And so therefore, great men stood up, and they said, enough of this. There's a reason why Kabbalah is off limits, and don't do this anymore. The thing is, once the Baal Shem Tov came and koshered it and gave us a healthy and wholesome way to learn it, which not only did not weaken the Torah, it strengthened the Torah. That's what I'm trying to say. If you look around today, who's the ultra-Orthodox? The Hasidim. Their arguments are totally false today because the most religious people are the Hasidim. It did not weaken the Torah. It strengthened the Torah when it came through the healthy channels of the Baal Shem Tov. And so therefore, those who are children of children of children or students of students of students of people who say, oh, my grandfather was a misnagid and I'm misnagid too, they're just ignoramus. They're holding on to a tradition which is a false tradition. It doesn't have any standing. And that's the only reason why a person will come today with some kind of a prideful statement and say, I don't learn that stuff. And there's huge swaths of people like this. So we're talking to you. Yeah. What about them?
They don't have they can't say this their father, father.
I'm saying even if they're not Baal Tshuvas, they can't say it, right? Certainly the Baal Tshuva Litvaks. That's why it used to be, when I started this yeshiva, in Esha Torah, you weren't allowed to learn Tanya.
Wow.
And there was a few people, they say the Rav had one on his desk, but there was no Tanya class. And on the contrary, if you learn that stuff, you don't talk about it. Now there's a Tanya shir, I heard. And there's Hasidic classes, and they have special Hasidic rabbis. If you want to learn Hasidus, you don't have to go all the way to YTD. We have our own Hasidic rabbi here, right? Yeah, Rabbi Yom Tov, right? You got all you need over there. So what I'm trying to say is, it's open season for Chassidus. I mean, this is old news already, right? This is a known fact. We're reading the Sicha. The Sicha is here from 1986. Thank God the world has progressed. Everyone knows this. Let's finish it up. And that's what we're saying through Yafutza Manasecha Chutza, by spreading the well springs and publicizing the spreading of Chassidus in all places, every single place. Ad sheyagiu gam chutza, even till it reaches what's called chutza, and chutza could be many things. Chutza means the lowest place, the outside, but obviously a college campus where a guy's learning whatever philosophy, it could be less chutza than a Litvish yeshiva where they think it's mamash asur to learn this stuff, right? It has to go to every place, including places which, even for strange reasons, they're opposed to it. We will, through spreading it to these places, right? And by the way, you should know, some of the biggest Hasidim all through time, their greatness of them, including the Alter Rebbe, was to what extent they could actually spread Hasidus to the darkest place. Why they called the Alter Rebbe the Litvak? Because he had the brains enough to go and bring the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov into those communities, into those places. That's why the Tanya, one of the reasons why the Tanya was given into the majesty of Torah in the Litvish world back in the day, is because that was the source of what was considered the Torah. To get it in there, not every chassid could do it. The Maggid had to send his number one guy, and it had to come out in this way of Chabad Chassidus, which I don't know if you know, but the word Tanya is a special. We're running out of time. I don't think so. The word Tanya is a special name for a type of klippa. Right? First of all, the word Tanya means snake, right? Like tanin. And what's the klippa we talked about before? Remember? What's the klippa of the Tanya? A unique klippa? It's much worse. Yeah.
Wow.
Somebody who thinks they don't have to learn Chassidus.
Not exactly. It's the arrogance that comes along with learning Torah, which is very, very normal, right? You're going to learn Torah, you're going to become wise. It comes with a certain arrogance. The arrogance of Talmidei Chachamim is called the Tanya.
Wow.
And he wrote this book to heal that, right? So in other words, he's like bringing this, because what does the Tanya really do? It shows you over and over again how you don't have much to be arrogant about, right? Right away it talks about a tzaddik and a beinoni, and you're thinking, at least I'm a beinoni, right? Keep reading, right? So it's all of a sudden like how excited can you be about yourself? It's humbling to read the Tanya, big time. There's certain people who don't read it because of that. See, I just can't deal with myself being not a beinoni even, right? Give me another book. So this Inyan is that it has to reach every place, even places which hold themselves on very, very high levels of Torah, and they think maybe they're above such a learning. Some people want to say, for example, Chassidus is like just watered down Kabbalah. If I'm going to really start going into Pnimius Torah, then I'll start learning the Eitz Chaim, and I'll be like a real Kabbalist. This is just watered down Kabbalah. Also false, right? This is like mamish the essence of the Pnimius Torah. This is what the Zohar predicted when it says in the end of days it will be learned in a way of Yisparna soon. It will finally be understood, etc., etc. So it has to go to every place. And through this, Nizke Bekarov, we will soon merit, as the Mashiach himself promised the Baal Shem Tov when he went on a little visit and visited Mashiach. The Ka'asei Mar Dal Malka Mashiach will merit the coming of Mashiach through this process, when the statement will be fulfilled, Ki malei ha'aretz de'as Hashem, kamayim li'am machasim, b'meir v'yameinu, mamish, the world will be filled with God like water fills the sea. Take of me, Ab Mamish. Yeah.